Our attention this morning is turned to security in the new year. Last week, Friday, President Tinubu charged the security chiefs to secure a decisive win against the numerous security challenges bedeviling the country. And while acknowledging there has been some progress in eliminating certain security threats, he says there's need to do more in order to achieve success. He made this statement while speaking to security chiefs and heads of intelligence agencies at the presidential security briefing held at the State House in Abuja on Friday. And joining me now for conversation this morning is Brigadier General Sani Usman, retired strategic communications expert and former Director, Army Public Relations. Thank you for joining us on the program, Brigadier General.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you.
Wish you the same. Let's begin with your assessment of security in Nigeria under the new service chiefs. In about 10 days, they would have spent some 7 months in office. Have there been significant improvements, in your opinion, as regards the nation's security since their appointment in June last year?
Well, I think they have been doing pretty well. The president, as you are quite aware, last Friday, when he was decorating the Guards Brigade commander and the commander of the Presidential Air Fleet, as well as his security officer that were promoted to various next ranks, he echoed the voice of what is happening in the sense that they have been doing very well. However, just like everything else, there is still room for improvement, and that call for renewed effort and vigor on the part of security chiefs and intelligence chiefs also to redouble their effort, because the average Nigerian, all he or she is interested in is the result practically on the ground. And you have had instances of some security challenges here and there. Take, for instance, the unfortunate incident in Plateau and quite recently in some parts of the country. So they have been doing pretty well, but I think there is need for more improvement in terms of what they are doing. And some of the issues, actually, they are far beyond the security chiefs, and that is where the government comes into play, the whole society approach about security challenges.
And we're going to talk about that in detail shortly. Also joining this conversation is the MD Beacon Consulting Limited, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, thank you for joining us. The president did say there's been good progress, according to him, in eliminating certain threats in some quarters. But according to him, the avoidable errors, as witnessed recently in Kaduna, are unacceptable and cannot be repeated. You recall what happened last year. It's perhaps the fourth airstrike, resulting in significant civilian fatalities since 2017. And it's again raised serious questions about the professionalism and competence of the Nigerian security architecture. Is it clear what the problem is in that regard?
Yes. Let me start by putting into context the president's statement using the data that we combine. When we looked at what happened in 2022 and compared it with 2023, we saw a decline across all the various components of variables that we monitor. So as an example, fatalities, which are the number of persons that were killed, we saw a near 30% decline in that regard. When we also looked at abduction, we saw a similar decline. However, if you go deeper into the figures, unfortunately, there were certain trends that emerged that we would really call on Mr. President and his security sector team to look closely at. So as an example, we saw a dip starting from immediately after the elections, from around May up until July. But by August, September, that dip was changing. By September, we saw almost a 90% increase in the number of fatalities and concurrent abductions. We also saw a change in the elements that were contributing to those fatalities. Now, this is a public platform, so I'm mindful about the kind of details I would reveal. But my point is, this type of intelligence and analysis of trends reveals a lot, and I would strongly urge the president's team to also embrace a similar data gathering and data analysis component. It will really say a lot in terms of whether we're making progress. Well, with regards to your question, specifically discussing some of the mishaps, collateral damage that occurred in 2023, in particular that of Tudunbiri, where several over 100 Nigerians were killed in that instance, and the president's directive that steps should be taken to ensure non-reoccurrence. I'm aware that a committee has been set up by the defense headquarters. It's also possible that the federal government is considering setting up a committee, and I think that's the way to go. We can't wish these things away. There are institutional and structural challenges that allow these things to happen. So perhaps a committee that would look at the reports that have been, because there were several mishaps in the past, and as far as I know, committees were set up, either administrative or in some instances judicial, but we are not aware that the reports of those committees have been implemented. So I think it's really appropriate for the president to set up one to look at the incident, and then of course attempt to harmonize the reports of previous occurrences. That's the only way we can prevent a reoccurrence. But the organizations themselves, the Army as an example, the Air Force, would need to work closely together. I think the Air Force has more experience in the use of air assets, especially unmanned aerial air assets. So the Army can learn a lot from them in that regard.
We're counting on that, Dr. Adam. Let me bring in the Brigadier General. In October of 2022, former Chief of Air Staff, Oladayo Amao, did say that a committee had been established to compile all allegations of accidental airstrikes on civilians in recent years for investigation. And we've heard that time and time again. Is there proof something significant is being done to fix this problem?
I think there's a lot is being done, and just like Kabir has just said, I think the most important thing is to make sure that this kind of mishap has not happened again. And earlier on, you have talked about professionalism of the armed forces, particularly, because in view of the recent happenings, they are very, very professional. But accidents do occur. But let it just be those kind of things that are normal in a situation that we have found ourselves. But no matter what, so any life lost, in that circumstances is not acceptable. And I think they are doing the best they could do to ensure that this kind of thing has not happened. Remember, we have had instances like that. But I think the most important thing is issue of coordination and collaboration among the security architecture. For instance, sharing of intelligence, sharing of information on the basis of, experience and assets available to each of the services or the security agencies as it will be. And of course, most importantly, coordinating those activities, operational activities of the security agencies, so that we can not have the occurrence, we will not have the occurrence of such instances. But most importantly also is to collaborate with the other people on the ground to ensure that the information being passed is accurate and also timely. I think this is the most important thing. But of course, I'm not wishing away the importance of the fact that, people who, that are found deliberately doing some kind of thing that should not be punished. And that is the essence of the compilation, what the former Chief of Air Staff has said. But I know as well, when in the Army that I knew, most instances when there were occurrences like that, either at individual or even at formation level, people are found culpable, and that is why in the theater, I think they have a standing court-martial. People that are involved are dealt with decisively, to the point that I could remember some of them have been given life sentences, some were even sentenced to death. So basically a lot is being done. So it is not just a question of wishing it away, but you should understand also there are two tiers of judicial, so to speak, or legal instrument, in as far as much the armed forces are concerned. You have the military justice system, and of course you have the, civil justice system that is applicable to every Nigerian. And I think the military justice system is up and doing, dealing with such things.
Indeed. Very, very crucial, the points you have raised, Brigadier General. But, some have also said it's not enough for the military to own up to the Kaduna killings, for instance. They say the military owes Nigerians an explanation as to what exactly happened. So investigate, compensate, but also be accountable. What do you make of the need for the outcome of this investigation to be declassified?
Well, I think because the security challenges are fluid and ongoing, and the classification, I think, to a large extent is time-bound, and the operations are ongoing. If you say you are going to declassify some of the information, definitely it might jeopardize ongoing or future operation in respect of, the security challenges. But by and large, accountability, even in warfare, is part of the principles of war, especially in internal security. So it is important to be accountable to all this, the inaction or actions, as the case may be. And I think the defense headquarters, and I think Army headquarters have taken it upon themselves to inquire about the circumstances that brought about this unfortunate incident at Tudumbiri in Kaduna State late last year. And a lot is being done. And the issue of compensation, I think it goes beyond the army, in fact, beyond the military. And because the military did not deploy themselves, then that is where the government, and I am so sure the federal government and the Kaduna State government, they are working hand in glove. Take, for instance, I think there's some of the amenities that are lacking. Take, for instance, I think construction of access road, and the issue of compensation is being. But I think the most important thing is to ensure that those who have been injured are given adequate care, and of course to ensure that such unfortunate incident does not reoccur again. I think that's the most important thing, and I think remedial actions are being taken to ensure, and that is why I talked about collaboration and coordination earlier on. And just lost, like Dr. Kabiru has said, there is so much to say, but of course in view of the prevailing circumstances, some of these things you just have to leave them. But most importantly, I think a lot is being done to coordinate the activities of the security forces, not just the armed forces, to ensure that the security challenges are being dealt with collectively.
All right. Dr. Adamu, there are concerns about what some say is a doctrinal deficit in fighting banditry from the air, with either drones or combat aircraft, that even in advanced societies, targeting can be imprecise. How often should this be deployed, back at home when we fight criminality of this nature?
No, definitely. Asymmetric warfare is one of the most difficult warfares to execute. Similarly, terrorism, it's a very difficult warfare to execute for the simple reason that in the case of some of the elements that are participating in the banditry, campaign, as it were, and then of course the terrorist campaign, they are embedded within civil society. It's not a conventional warfare where you have the enemy on one side and then you have your fighting forces on the other side. In this instance, they are embedded within the civil populace, and so if you're not careful, and sadly this is what we've not done very well in Nigeria, we have not been able to carry the people along in both the anti-terrorism war campaign as well as the anti-banditry campaign that we're given. And anyone who is in doubt just needs to pick up the paper and or even just go to your search engine or online and search for informants. And what you would find would be shocking. You are living witness to the fact that even at the height of some of the state-level measures that were implemented in the northern part of the country to support the anti-banditry campaign, when certain state governments banned the use of GSM communication for some period, closed down markets, and took other, what I would call extraordinary measures. The law enforcement agencies arrested women who had put petroleum in cellophane bags and were transporting them to these bandits, clearly showing that these bandits have found a way to involve the local populace in supporting their operations. So in summary, there are industries that have emerged that are supporting the banditry activities, unfortunately, in the northern states. And why I brought this up is if we're using military assets that have the capacity for mass casualty in such warfare, then the likelihood is that civilians will be affected, just like we saw in Kaduna. We've seen it in Zamfara, in Yobe, and in Borno State. And where that happens, it would affect the ability of the government to win the hearts and minds of the people. Now, the challenge with this is that there is no anti-terrorism campaign, no anti-banditry campaign that can be won if you don't carry the people along. So this conversation is crucial, it's absolutely important. The military, the other security agencies who are fighting these two campaigns would have to ensure that wherever, for instance, they are deploying assets, it is in a situation where there will be minimal casualty on the side of ordinary civilians.
Apparently, Nigerians are looking forward to that. Hopefully, we won't be hearing of such mistakes anytime soon. Brigadier General, another major issue last year, is the killings in Plateau, which took another greater dimension late last year with some 200 people killed on Christmas Eve in an attack on about 28 communities in Mango, Bokos, and Barakin Ladi. These attacks, according to community sources, we understand, were carried out even when a letter that was dated 15th November was sent to those communities by the perpetrators of this evil act. When the president says his pursuit of $1 trillion economy is in jeopardy with insecurity, Plateau is no doubt a good example. Why do you think the challenge on the Plateau has persisted for so long, even with the change in the service chiefs?
Well, it is quite sad and quite unfortunate that we have lost so much precious life on Christmas Eve on the Plateau based on the criminal acts of some, criminally minded people. But by and large, the truth is that for quite some time, Plateau State has been the epicenter of all these security challenges. And I think the missing link, Kabiru has earlier talked about it, about involvement of the people. And earlier on, I have talked about, the whole society approach to security challenges. And let us not deceive ourselves. Even if you bring in 1 million policemen or 1 million soldiers, they cannot bring about peace on the Plateau except the people themselves realize the need for peaceful coexistence. Therefore, whatever measures you are going to put in place, it must be people-centric. But again, it cannot be people-centric unless you get the buy-in of the people. So many people have been aggrieved on the Plateau. So kinetic measures alone cannot solve the problem. We have had the instances of Operation Safe Haven had been there for over a decade now. Even though they have recorded tremendous progress in terms of mitigating some of these challenges, but there are underlying factors that we have to address. Take, for instance, security challenges are always predicated on the political, social, and economic structure of the country. To what extent the whole component of the Plateau have been integrated into the political, social, and economic well-being of the Plateau State, or on the Plateau, as it were, or other parts of the country. So these are the important things that we have to look at, and that is why the conflict on the Plateau has been protracted, not only on the Plateau and many other parts of the country. So the issue of justice has to come into play. Then, most importantly, the perpetrators of this crime have to be fully investigated and, made to face the full wrath of the law. And I'm so happy that so far the security agencies have made arrests, and we should not in any way, politicizing security issues. Take, for instance, we have instances because people who are suspected to have committed this heinous crime, women troop out on the street to start protesting against it, just like when Alkali, Major General Alkali of blessed memory, was also killed. I think we should look at security issues dispassionately, devoid of sentiments. A criminal is a criminal regardless of the level of relationship between you and him. And unless we look at it that way, we'll continue to have the problem that we have on the plateau. And this, again, the government has to be there for each and every one of them. Like I said earlier on, a lot of people are aggrieved on the plateau. You need to talk to the people. Everybody seems to be marginalized. And I think now it's time that people should be given greater sense of belonging, to be made to understand that there is need to live in peace, there is need to have mutual coexistence among the components. And I am so happy that both Muslim and Christian communities, they have trooped to the government house to say that they want to live in peace. And I think there is need for the government to listen to them, and there should be constructive engagement, especially with the community leaders on the plateau, religious leaders and opinion leaders, and we look at security issues dispassionately, devoid of ethnicism and religious consideration. And I think we will be on the right pedestal towards having a lasting peace on the plateau. Take, for instance, just even the military some time back, I think set up a 57-man committee or thereabout, headed by a retired justice who went through the nooks and crannies of the plateau. They have, condensed or gotten information on the way forward. To what extent? And there had been so many, commission of inquiries or judicial inquiries on the plateau crisis. What happened to the recommendations that have been made? What happened to them? And I think it's about time to dust them and look at them, and of course update them to see to what extent we can have a lasting peace. And definitely the government has to work hand in gloves with the people and has to work with all the components of Nigerian society, the federal, the state, and the local government system, as well as leaders, including the youth. You have to bring them together and make sure that you constructively engage them. And I think we will have peace on the plateau doing that. And of course, there should be deterrent for whoever commits such atrocities. He should be made to pay the full wrath of the law. And I will give you an example. I think one of the, is it an arrow in Panyang was killed. When he was killed, when the chief of army staff gave marching order, lo and behold, the perpetrators, eloped as far as Lagos. In Lagos State, they were arrested and they were brought back. So if you can give such directive and ensure that such perpetrators are apprehended and allow the criminal justice system to take its course, and I think we will have peace on the plateau.
Dr. Damo, the Brigadier General has talked about the need for justice in the mix of all of this. If people keep perpetrating such evil and they're not brought to book, it's hard to explain that to the locals, particularly when they know who these individuals are. And in all fairness to the state governor, I've had a couple of conversations with him. We've saw quite a number of, effort is made in the area of non-kinetic move, bringing the leaders of these communities together, signing some peace deal. But that doesn't seem to be enough. But I want to bring to your remembrance, at some point at the height of the mango crisis in Plateau, mid-last year, the local women staged a protest, and they were demanding the withdrawal of troops. Which was quite strange, to the development in that part of the country. How do you think the military can boost that form of people's confidence in their operations and capacity to resolve their problems?
So it's extremely difficult. And I agree almost 100% with the sentiments of Brigadier General Pukashika. One of the points I would like to add is the influence of politicians, both positive and negative. Part of why we're seeing a resurgence of conflict or violence in Plateau State, in my honest opinion, is the aftermath of the February and March elections, both the presidential and then the governorship, as well as the other level elections. Sadly, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, the judicial processes that followed the elections, just like the elections itself, especially the campaigns before the elections, we saw a lot of negative mobilization using religion, using ethnicity, and in some instances, using other sentiments that I wouldn't even want to mention in a public space. Now, immediately after the appeal court ruling, and we all know what happened, the tribunal first, and then, of course, the appeal court we saw a resurgence of that type of negative mobilization. Now we're at the stage where the Supreme Court is about to rule. And I can tell you as a risk management specialist, either way the Supreme Court rules, there would be consequences on the Plateau. And this is the premise that I would urge the federal government to approach the Plateau from. The society has been fractured by political sentiments. There seem to be this desire, as it were, in the different ethnic groups that make up the Plateau, that grouping themselves and using their numbers can help influence the outcome of political decisions. Now, with that protest that you mentioned by women, if you go to the killing of the general that Brigadier General Kukashika mentioned, when the military attempted to excavate a pool where the corpse of the general was mentioned, it was the same women that were used to prevent the military. 2 weeks ago, about a few days ago, women also were mobilized to target a traditional ruler. And in fact, I touched a part of his palace. So the point I'm trying to make is that there is this level of distrust between the people and their leaders, transcending both traditional and sometimes religious and then ethnic leaders that do not agree to certain political decisions, either at the subnational or sometimes even at the local government level. Indeed. But in all of this, I think in all of this, the major challenge with all sense of responsibility is that we haven't seen a very good structure for managing security by the various state governments. As an example, in spite of all the challenges in Plateau State at the moment, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I doubt if the state has a commissioner of security or internal security like we have in other states of the federation. Till date, the state does not have a trust fund for managing security. Neither has it appointed a special advisor on security. Now, why is this important? States that have done this have been able to provide a subnational structure for supporting the federal structure in managing security. Now, what this does is that the elements of M&E, monitoring and evaluation, that is required in every good security structure is supported by the state-level security structure. So I think the governor, we don't know who will be the governor after the Supreme Court. If it turns out to be the current one, he needs to look closely at that. If not, then whoever it is needs to look closely at this.
Indeed. Very, very interesting, particularly when you talk about trust fund and the need to have, a special advisor in that regard and a commissioner for security. We're going to take a short break now. There's a lot to say in such a short time.